welcome back to the Dice Tower. I'm Camilla Cleghorn.
I'm Joey Evans.
I'm Chris Yee.
Today we're going to take a look at the animals of Baker Street. I know, it's so cute. It's brought to you by Yellow, by Dave Neal and Clementine Beauvais. Yeah, so this is, in this game, you're going to be playing as the animals, right? What do I do with it? There we go.
Yeah, I was like, I guess it's mine now.
Yeah, Chris, here, fix me. No. Yeah, you're going to be playing as the animals that live in the home of Sherlock and are trying to become detectives themselves, right?
Yeah, very, very cute, kid-friendly kind of a theme.
Absolutely.
It's aged, it says, aiming for 10 plus on the age
It's what it says,
there.
1 to 4, 10 plus, 45 minutes. We'll get to that here in a few minutes, our thoughts on that. But I was drawn by this because of the art, but I love that it is kind of keeping this old book Sherlock kind of feel to it at the same time. You know, I think it really, that's what drew me into it. Knew nothing about the game. Before we go into our thoughts on how we thought of it, though, let's get a brief overview of how it plays. We're going to try to be as spoiler-free as possible in this, but we'll be right back. All right, let's check out the animals of Baker Street, coming to you from Yellow. When you first open up the box, you're going to have a series of scenarios in there in which you'll pick one, open up for all the goodies inside. When you open it up, the first thing you're going to have is something that describes the scenario as far as how to set it up. It's going to tell you which side of the board to be on, how many time tokens you need, which is the ticking clock or the event trigger in the game, and it's going to tell you what locations to lock that you won't have access to during that scenario. After that, you do need to keep this card handy because on the back side is the hint system that you'll use if you ever get stuck. So keep that handy. The other thing that comes in you need to keep handy is any dusk or dawn cards, anything like that, that are going to trigger when you run out of the time token. So if you ever need to take a time token and can't, you flip this over for the event and it'll let you know what to do from there. It might be move the story on, go to a different time of day, add new characters, but something is going to trigger when you run out of those time tokens. You're also going to find location cards, which you need to keep handy. We'll go over those in a second. And a numbered deck that you'll need as well. So keeping both of those handy. With that, you're ready to jump into play. All right, to play the game, you will first consult the case book here, which is going to give you an overview of the case that you are trying to solve. So you would read that entry to figure out what happened. Did someone go missing? Again, trying to avoid spoilers, but you're trying to, you find out about the case you're trying to solve here. To jump into play, you're just going to choose one of these locations, which I will say is very handy on the back of the case book. They are all shown here on their day and night side. So if you don't know what they're called, you can look it up on there. But you choose a location to go to. You're going to put a time token on that location and then move your character marker to that location. At that point, you will find in this deck that location, and you will turn it over and read to see what's going on in that location. So it's going to kind of give you a little synopsis or what's going on here. At the bottom of all the cards, you're going to see some magnifying glasses. Now, that's going to tie into your character and different items that you're going to find throughout the game. Each character has a personality. For example, Cherrywood here is really good at searching locations and might gather things that others are going to miss. Clay is really good with his words, convincing people of things. Briar is stealthy. It can also fly, maybe reaching places or getting items that you can't because of height restrictions. And Calabash is just a brute. She is forceful, strong, and quite scary. So each of them have a different personality, and if you think that personality is going to help you with the story that you just read, you would turn them over and try to match up their magnifying glasses. Now, I don't want to show too much of that for the spoilers, so we'll just go to the player aid here to see what's going to happen when you try and match those up. If they don't match up, nothing happens. If they match up and there's a number showing, you're going to consult this deck to find out what will happen. And just showing you real briefly, some of them are going to further the story. Others are going to completely replace the location because it's going to alter the storyline of some sort. Maybe there's a new option available there now or something of that. Now that you have moved past that point of the story, you have a new information for that location specifically. If it matches up and they show a time token, then you have to spend extra time there, kind of wasting your day away. And if you have these scratch marks, that means you have to leave that location immediately and can take no other further actions there without, once again, spending time to return. You can always revisit locations. So if you went here and got some information and then needed to come back, you can always revisit. But again, each movement is going to
cost you one of these time tokens. Once you need to take a time token and there are no other left, that's when it goes into the dusk. The story is also very clear. If you get to a card, it lets you know when you have solved the case and have everything you need, in which case you would once again consult the case book to read your conclusion over here. But until that point, you're just going to keep visiting different locations, collecting different items, or perhaps altering different locations to open up new options, collecting different or meeting different people, all of which are on the back of the rule book again, so you're not going to get lost on who's who in the story. You do have a reference guide for that as well, up until you reach that conclusion. So that's a very broad overview of the mechanisms of the game that you can expect to see as you go through it. Avoiding any spoilers with the story specifically. These mechanisms are consistent through the stories though. So that gives you a very overview of how to play. Let's go back up top and see how we think it works.
All right, so there it is. Again, spoiler-free, and we're going to try, in talking about it, to remain spoiler-free as well, but we are going to talk specifically about the different mechanisms because I think these type of games, especially with kids, it's really important to know if they work, how they work, and where's that kind of finicky balance of things. Right. So spoiler-free, but we are going to talk about the different mechanisms that you might see come up in further cases, not necessarily in the tutorial system. So first off, let's talk about the stats that it gives you. 1 to 4 players. It's all cooperative, you're playing together. 10 plus in 45 minutes. What do you guys think about that? Is it accurate? Is it good?
I think the time's accurate. Age-wise, I think it could go lower, to be honest. I mean, as long as you're reading it to the kids. And I think 10 plus, you start hitting that teenage age. It's like, are they going to want to play this or whatever when you start hitting 12 and 13? But I think 6 and 7-year-old, you start reading it. It's very cute. It's very... I don't want to say the word light, but the story is very concise and it's not too much reading. Everything happens quickly and it's really cute. So I think you could go, it's the rare case that I think this is higher than it could be. I think it could go down to 6 or 7 years old.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. If your kid likes to sit down and listen to stories and stuff, if you want to have fun and read like different voices for the different animals, you definitely can. I did that even when playing with adults, but that's because
Yes,
I
we did.
refused not to.
He did. It was awkward.
Yeah, we thought uncomfortable.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like the animal theme works well. You know, my daughter looks at the cover like this and sees that. What kind of dog is that?
Oh,
is that a beagle?
It's a beagle, right?
Is it a beagle? It's kind of lab mix, though.
It's no lab.
Looks at an adorable dog like that and is interested, right?
Right.
And so I think it does go a little bit lower than that, but it's fine because as you mentioned, you read some story and then after you're done reading on the card, you then make some decisions. How do you want to match things up? Should we go to a different location? So you're not constantly stuck in reading story. That's when it loses kids and me.
Right. Yeah. And I will say, I think the 45 minutes becomes a little bit short in later cases. I think that they can run a little bit longer. But for that tutorial system and for the first case specifically, I mean, I think when we played the first case, we looked at the clock and we're like, we didn't even know what it was. We're like, oh, that was right at 45 minutes. That's exactly what it says it'll be, and so when you're learning the system, it really is right on. I do think that they can go a little bit longer, but by that point, if your kid likes it or not and can handle a little bit more as well. I do agree. I think it can go lower, but I think the 10 plus is playing independently. And I think that's because of the story and the writing in it. They're going to kind of feel like they have a couple SAT words in there. Now,
yeah, I agree.
I mean, there's one that
undoubtedly, I
don't want to point one. One of us didn't know one of the words at one point in the game.
That would be me.
And is older than 10.
Yes, a little bit.
No, and so I do think, but it has have a good balance of it feeling like it's a mature writing.
It is.
But still have a really cute story. And with that kind of the art and the theme in there, I think that this is an interesting take. I'm a really big fan of themes that you're familiar with, but a little bit different take on them. So this is a Sherlock game where you're not Sherlock. You're the animals of Sherlock, kind of following in his footsteps and training to be his assistants and his protégés. Right.
And that's Sherlock has almost got to the point to where, like Cthulhu, there's so many things out there you have to be very careful. You're like, it's oversaturated. But like you said, this is a different take on it. And not to spoil anything, but there's certain situations where you are working around Sherlock, and they'll mention the fact that he's up there looking at papers. And it's really interesting because he's up there solving a case you've seen before, but you're sitting here worrying about a missing whatever animal.
The acorn is gone. Yeah, stuff like that.
It's very simple, and it's very interesting. It's like a dual reality type situation, and that's what I think draws me to this game, because they have a whole new world to explore underneath the world that you know.
Right, absolutely.
And I will say on I to avoid spoilers, use the example of like, the missing acorn. Actually, not really. Like, animals get roughed up in this story. So like that's the thing, is it's not just saccharine sweet, and I appreciate that, because I think people underestimate how much kids can take. When I was a kid, all the pretend games that we played all the time, we beat each other up, and blow each other up with bombs and stuff.
Yeah,
kids can handle a mouse getting roughed up a little bit, or a spider getting kicked away or something like that. So it's fine.
I'll take it a step further, and I'll say, and they need that in a way, because one of my favorite experiences with my son was playing in Stuffed Fables, and when the kid in the story and the stuffed animals are going through things and expressing emotions that he was able to relate to. Maybe he's seen bullying at school, or maybe he's been in that situation, he or she has been in that situation, there's something relatable. And so I think that the story in this does a good job of remaining a story. So you're far enough removed that it's not like you're sitting down for therapy. But at the same time, it has those opportunities that I think kids can relate to, of like, oh, this animal got their feelings hurt because another animal started hanging out with somebody else and not them. So they felt excluded.
Gossiping.
Exactly.
Like, those subjects get brought up in here.
They do, and I think that is really fantastic, because it's not in a way of like, and how would you feel about that? And so it's not, but it just brings it up in a very natural way, that if that needs to be a conversation, or it's relatable and you can see the animal work through this, it's done very naturally, where it doesn't feel preachy, but those moments are there.
And it brings up, like when Chris said, like, if your kid likes being read a story to, this is that, but in a choose your own adventure style way. And I think it does it better, because the problem with choose your own adventure styles is you're reading, but there's nothing for them to visualize. This one, they're like, hey, where would you like to go? Up here to the window? Or do you think we should check the sewers? And that right there, it really is the next iteration of the choose your own adventure type story, and I think I was really engrossed in it because of that.
Absolutely, I think that's great. So speaking of this story, the story as you play through the scenarios is going to develop. You're going to get alternate locations, not like an alternate card for the location, because now you have information that's available there. You glean something, or maybe you have the right item. Different animals will come into it, where they can then either travel with you or be used as clues. And so how did you guys think that worked, kind of the evolving nature of the story throughout the scenario?
I'll say that I really like that at the mechanical investigation mechanism for this is line up cards and see if those things match. I think that's really great. It's you can't just eyeball them, because they're really precise. Line up these two things.
I tried. He did, and he wasted our time.
I did.
Right. And so the fact that so your starting characters have that, but then we have a new friend who's tagging along, and they have their own little bars at the top that we can say, oh, I bet we need their help to get past this obstacle, line up the cards. I think mechanically it works really well. Story-wise, it works just as well. And so I love that when thematics and mechanics align like that.
Right.
I agree, and I think it almost makes you feel clever when they ask for something and you're like, oh, we have this clue to show them.
I have this newspaper.
You're like, look at that, I'm glad we went there first. And it's very interesting. Now, one thing I will say, I think later in the different scenarios, at first you don't know the characters, like the personalities of these characters and who to bring out. Later, you're going to realize, oh, I'm going to grab the spider in this one. I'm going to grab this. This is a good one. And that evolution is really fun to see.
Right, as you kind of get that connection to the characters you're playing, right? And oh, Calabash is going to be really good at this, or Briar, that thing went out the window, we can send Briar to go get it, or something like that. No, definitely you do end up having the connection, because it is the same characters, and knowing that crow you see up there is Nevermore. And so when it references the story, you do get that emotional connection to it.
Very cute reference.
Very
cute.
It's fun.
It kind of like Animaniacs, where the kid, like the little references to Sherlock cases, and Nevermore being the Raven, or
the Raven,
like.
I said crow, but it's Raven.
Over kids' heads.
Right.
Easter eggs.
But you're gonna chuckle as an adult, so it's good for families. It's not just one to be like, here's a game, go play in the corner, right?
Yeah.
Don't set something on fire, kid.
Right.
Let's gather around, let's make this a family activity.
Yeah. It's legitimately some funny moments too, where you see those connections that references something for you, but also you see the personality and the way the characters interact. You know, it really it's like, oh, that's a cute. That's a nice nod, you know, where it's a very natural kind of nod. One thing you referenced, the investigation system with the magnifying glasses. I felt like that worked really well, albeit a little bit finicky. But I appreciate how exact it is. You really do have to line those arrows up exactly, because if that magnifying glass is a little bit off, you don't get that, or you do get that. Or you might be like, oh, I should have had that. Like, you really do have to be exact with it. And I think that's where that 10 plus kind of comes in. But if you're playing with younger kids, you just need to double check it, because it is very exact. So it's like, while I appreciate it, it makes it a little finicky, but I think I'm glad that they erred on that side of finicky.
Yeah, because I would be like, oh, if you just push it over a little bit, and it does have to be exact.
It does. That's a magician in you trying to be like, I think it works.
Hard. You're like, I peeked, and I'm like, I think that'll work. Nope, doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work.
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
so.
absolutely. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we get to final thoughts on this to bring up?
I don't think. I was trying to think of big negatives on it. I don't know. I think it's really, really a cute game.
Okay, why don't we go into your final thoughts then, and you can kind of.
My final thoughts? I think it's great. I think this is the kind of game that you want as a family. You're going to want. Your kids are going to want to dive back into it. It's one of those. It's a theme that you enjoy, probably as Sherlock, and that's one that I really wish I could get her into that type of stuff. But the Sherlock Holmes books, and most of them out there, aren't something that she could grasp. This simplifies everything, and it's just cute. It has Easter eggs for adults, which, let's be honest, that's why adults will sit through a Disney movie, because there are Easter eggs in there for us. So I really think this clicks all the boxes that you want to do as a family.
Nice. What would you rate it?
I'd give it an 8.
8? Okay.
Yeah.
All
so,
right.
I mean, I may give it higher, but going further into it, but it's really enjoyable to play as a family.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'm also giving this one an 8 because it strikes a great balance. I think that Joe, you or one of you two mentioned this kind of bookcase, bookshelf aesthetic, or book cover aesthetic to it, but it's also animals.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's silly and kind of and not childish at the same time, which is a good balance to strike. My daughter has really enjoyed playing a lot of these types of investigation games. So the flashback zombie kids and micro macro and stuff. I know, particularly for this one, what's nice about it is that there's not the as blatant adult references as in like micro macro. I know some people have said like I would love it as a family game, but sometimes your kids say, hey, what's this thing over here? And you're like, I'll tell you when you're older.
Yeah, right.
That's not in this one, so I can appreciate that. Great call using cute animals and in a great aesthetic, but also a mechanically fun and a story-wise fun investigation game. That's an 8 for me.
Okay.
And one thing I will add, that there are never any game-changing bad decisions in it. Even when you ended, it's like, oh, you can still finish the case, it's just finished the next day. You know, simple things like that. So that's one thing I did like.
Yeah, you never feel like you fail.
Right.
You know,
You don't feel
Exactly.
stupid,
Right.
unlike some other Sherlock Holmes games.
Absolutely.
So many other.
For sure. Yeah, so for me, I'm coming in a lot higher on this. I'm going to come in at a 9 on this one. I think that this really hits a great sweet spot, as I felt you mentioned, zombie kids, the flashback one specifically. It strikes a very good balance that I think that game did as well, where it's engaging and the kids feel like they have the opportunity to make really meaningful decisions and are engaged in the whole time. So it's a good mix between choose your own adventure game and story game. You know, the stories are a little bit of clippets that you get little at a time, so they're digestible, where the kids are not going to lose focus because it's a little story clip and then they make an action.
Yep.
And I think the hint system is fantastic. It reminds me very much of when my son can't find his shoe, that, you know, it's, where is it? Right in the closet where it's supposed to be. I know this, but he's losing his mind because he can't find his shoe. And I'm like, where did you last see it? If you were responsible, where might you put it? You know, I mean, so I think the hint system is fantastic. You're just going down this checklist of like, go until you find something helpful, you know, and it's like kind of leading and directing, but still lets them feel clever. So they don't feel like I failed and had to get a hint.
To his defense, he probably put it on the floor and you put it in the closet. So
No, he put on the floor, and then I said, that's not where that goes, and he put it in the closet. So I guess in his defense, it's not where he left it originally. Okay, that's fair.
Just saying the clues don't line
the
up.
third time.
That is such a good analogy. I wouldn't even raise my score based on that. You're right. You're right. The
so
clue
good.
system is really good.
It is really good.
It's fantastic. And so I think that it's just a good time. And I love how the mechanisms of the game through the different cases don't change. But because of the two sides of the board, and because you can get the different clues and you get different companions along the way that have also different personalities, it leaves so much open to be done that each case feels different, it feels unique, and it maintains this fresh feeling from case to case without changing the mechanisms. They don't have to learn anything new. And that's such a sweet balance when playing with kids. And as an adult, I very much enjoyed it as well. So for me, this is a phenomenal game that I very much look forward to going through with my son. And he's 9, so he's under this 10. He is closer to that age range recommended. But yeah, so for me, it's a 9, absolutely. I think it's a fantastic, excellent, a seal of excellence game.
Yes.
So
I agree.
So that's going to be it for us on The Animals of Baker Street. Check it out. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. But until next time, I'm Camilla Cleghorn.
I'm Joey Evans.
I'm Chris Yee, and the panda did it.